I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but I just can't stay away from it because it's so important in just really anything in business and in life, and that's practice. Too many salespeople just don't practice sales, and there's so many things to practice. So if you click this video, I'm guessing you don't want to just find out how to be a better salesperson. You want to be the best. And that was me for pretty much my entire career. But most of my career, I spent searching how to become the best salesperson. In fact, still to this day, while I've had a lot of success, I'm still searching and seeking the best answers, the best advice, and really the data that tells me what the best salespeople do. And while I may be one of the best in my own company, there are definitely people that are much better than me. So if you're looking to become the best salesperson in your industry or for your company, stick around because that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Now, if you're a salesperson and you actually care about your prospects, you want to make a difference in their lives and in their careers. Now, if you care about your prospects, you want to make a difference in their lives and in their careers. And when you're selling business to business, there's a lot of change that you can help create within these organizations. And it's one of the reasons why I really like what I do, is because I can have huge changes I can make in these businesses that I serve. Now, if you're looking for more modern day ways to serve modern buyers, I actually wrote a book on it. It's called The Intelligence Factor. If you're interested in it, you can go ahead and grab it down below and learn a little bit more about the philosophies and strategies I used. Anyways, let's get started. Now, our first tip is something that you've probably heard before, but it is entirely true when it comes to being great at sales, and that is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, there really isn't that true for anything that we want to get great at. When we start something, whether it's brand new or we're advancing in our career and we're trying new things, you really have to get great at embracing the fact that you're uncomfortable doing something you've never done before. Now, I don't care if you've been selling for 20 years or you've been selling for 6 months. The fact of the matter is, it can be very uncomfortable calling on prospects, doing cold calls, warm calls, following up with prospects that maybe have ghosted you, or just the general idea of selling someone something can be very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And if you're a beginner, it can be even more uncomfortable. So if you're just starting out in sales and you really want to improve, the first thing that I would encourage you to do is just get used to the fact that most of the time you're going to be feeling extremely uncomfortable. And if you are feeling that way, that's a really good sign, because when you're uncomfortable, that means you're doing the right things. Unless you're doing something, that's kind of scandalous or slimy, which obviously I hope you're not doing those things. That may feel uncomfortable too. But the fact of the matter is that when you're doing the right actions and taking action every single day, it's gonna feel uncomfortable. It's gonna feel uncomfortable calling prospects in the middle of the day, early morning, late at night, or late in the evening for that matter. And you're gonna feel like you're bugging them, because persistent salespeople, as long as they're leading with the right messaging, are the ones that make the most money and typically are the ones that are best in the industry. So you need to learn to get used to being uncomfortable. And the more that you can embrace and actually seek out the feeling of being uncomfortable, the greater you're gonna be as a salesperson, because you're gonna constantly seek and strive to find that discomfort. And if you think about anything else in your life that you've gotten really good at, just think about the fact, unless you're just an all-natural athlete, or maybe you're a natural at a musical instrument, most people that get really, really good at something, or even if you are naturally talented and you want to like blow the roof off and go well beyond into expert level, you have to push yourself into that feeling of being extremely uncomfortable and staying in that zone of uncomfortability. The more you can learn to harness that feeling and strive to find those uncomfortable zones, the more you'll grow in your career. Because even if you reach a really high level of selling and you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, there's still more for you to do. There's still more steps you can take to become a better business person. There's still more steps you could take to become a better leader and help lead your customers. You could become a better consultant and advisor to your customers. And all those things are going to require you to try new things that you may not have ever done before. So for tip number 1, remember this: get used to staying and being uncomfortable, honestly, as much as you possibly can, if you want to become one of the best salespeople in your company and your industry. Now on to number 2. Now for the second one, I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but I just can't stay away from it because it's so important in just really anything in business and in life, and that's practice. Too many salespeople just don't practice sales, and there's so many things to practice, from learning how to better, make cold calls, write better emails, how to negotiate with people, learning your product and service, learning more about your industry. There's just so many things that you can learn and need to learn to be really great at sales. But ask yourself, are you practicing? And if the answer is you're not, that's okay, but you have to find a way to implement practice into your daily life every single day. In fact, even 25 minutes a day is better than nothing. And it's something that I actually implemented a couple years ago, is that I can't really at this point in my career spend all day or hours a day practicing. I have a wife, I have kids, I have a very demanding career, I've got a lot going on, but I still have to practice. And so what I do is I schedule the time in every single day. And that's really true of anything that you want to improve on or commit to, is you have to schedule it into your calendar. So for tip number 2, ask yourself, are you where you want to be right now? And if you're not, and if you're watching this video, you're probably not the best salesperson in your industry, or maybe you are, but you're just trying to get better. And if that's you, kudos to you. But you have to ask yourself if you're practicing. And if you're not, why not? Is it because maybe you're just feeling lazy? Maybe that happens to many of us. Maybe it's that you're not really sure how to practice. And if you're looking for ways to practice, in this video right here, I actually talk about a couple different ways that you can practice to get better at sales. Now on to number 3. Now for number 3, it actually goes very close with number 2, and it's that you have to become obsessed with learning and self-education. Now I haven't met one single person that's really great at sales that doesn't read a ton, doesn't listen to podcasts, and just in general doesn't self-educate themselves all the time. In fact, it's something that the best salespeople in the world do very frequently. It's what the best CEOs do. It's what the best business people do. And if you start looking at yourself like a business person versus just a salesperson, you should realize that you need to self-educate yourself. And maybe you're one of those people that just expects your company to, feed you information and feed you training. And my company that I work for has tons of great training, and I watch and take notes on all of it. And in fact, I seek out additional training that they offer that may not necessarily be applicable to my specific job, but it may help me at some point down the road. But if you're not going to educate yourself, you need to ask yourself, why is it that you haven't reached your fullest potential? Because the chances are, is if you're not educating yourself at all, you're much further from your potential than you even realize. And then you must wonder, are you just going through the motions? Are you asking other people to do the work for you? Oftentimes in corporate sales, because you're selling B2B, it can be really easy to just rely on the next training that gets pushed out. And I'm sorry to say, but that's just not enough to get really good and become the best at sales. If you want to be the best salesperson, you have to drive your own self-education, because number 1, every person learns differently. And so if you learn more from a visual standpoint, or maybe you're more of an audio listener, maybe it's better for you to listen to podcasts, or maybe it's better for you to listen to YouTube videos on the particular subject that you're trying to learn. Maybe you could buy a course and you can listen to it in the car. Whatever the way that your preferred method of learning is, whether it's visual and through reading, auditory learning, or visual, you need to find what works for you, and you need to spend a ton of time driving that self-education. And just like I talked about in number 2, you have to schedule the time in to self-educate. It's really the same thing as practicing, in that it's that critical. And so one of the things that I haven't been very good at in my career, and really in my life, is I really didn't enjoy reading. And in fact, to this day, I love learning, but I don't love sitting down with a book. It makes me tired, and really no matter what time of the day it is, it just puts me to sleep. But what I do love doing is I love listening to podcasts. I love watching YouTube videos that are educational. I buy a ton of courses that I learn to self-educate myself on all different types of topics, not just sales, but marketing and accounting and just different things in the digital world that I need to know how to do to run my other business. And in fact, there are principles and things that I apply in my daily life, in my sales job as an employee. So, you need to find what works for you, and you need to implement it every day, schedule it in, And then just don't let yourself off the hook. Commit to self-education and do it for a long period of time, and you'll be surprised. You're gonna really start enjoying your career more because you can start taking bits and pieces here of like something you heard on a podcast or something that you listened to in a book. Like right now I'm listening to a book on audio that's 0 to 100 million is basically the subtitle of the book. And it's about a entrepreneur that talks about the 4 different types of stages as an entrepreneur. And one of the stages is an infancy stage, and then you go through adolescence, and then childhood, and then adolescence, and then you become an adult. And in each one of those phases, they have different problems. And as I'm listening to this audiobook, while I'm nowhere near $100 million or even $50 million in my business, I've sold $80 million worth of business. And I started thinking about all the different decisions that the company I work for makes that is $1 billion company. And I could start seeing that these little iterations in topics that he brings up, how they apply to our business. And it helps me understand why do we make decisions the way we make them, some of the challenges that my leaders may have, and it just makes me a more well-rounded business person. So don't think that everything that you have to read and educate yourself on has to be about sales, or it doesn't always have to be even about the specific industry that you're serving, or maybe the product or solution that you sell. And while those things are absolutely mandatory to become the best at sales, it's really helpful to become a very well-rounded business person, to study and learn all types of different things. And it really becomes an enjoyable thing, I found, to just learn about a lot of different business topics because it allows me to bring these things up in conversation, and it just allows me to have a more open mind as I engage in business conversations, both internally within my company, both with my customers, and also in my own business. All right, let's get on to number 4. So the 4th thing that I really want to talk to you about is becoming a consultant instead of a salesperson. Now, this is a topic that some people don't agree with because some people think, oh, well, when you want to become a trusted advisor, you're really not a salesperson anymore. And that's just for people that really can't sell. Now, there may be truth to that. I just have a different opinion. In fact, it's why I wrote the book I wrote was entirely because I just believe that leading and coaching and consulting your customers is so much more important to become convincing and persuasive than trying to sell them on something. And I think this has become pretty obvious at this point in the sales game for a lot of people, but unfortunately the way that most salespeople show up in front of their customers is entirely focused on them, the salesperson, the number they're trying to hit, what their company's trying to drive, and it has very little to do with helping the company that they're serving and selling to solve their problem. Now, the reason that I feel this way, and there's been many other books beyond my own and well beyond and well before the book that I wrote that talk about being a consultant and a trusted advisor. In fact, one of my favorite books is called The Trusted Advisor. Strongly recommend you pick up that book. I've read it a few times, and every time I have some strong takeaways. But one of the best things you can be doing, which we talked about in number 2 and number 3, is practice and self-education, is you need to become an expert in your craft and become a consultant to your customers. Now, I don't care if you sell toilet paper or you sell very advanced software solutions to enterprise companies. You need to understand the ins and outs of your product and service, the problems that you help your customers solve, and help them realize things that they may not see as a leader in their business, and why your product or service is gonna help them solve that. But the way you go about it is very consultative. You get really, really good at asking questions, which again, is why it's so important to learn to practice and self-educate, because when you educate yourself and you practice utilizing and implementing what you learned, you can then ask very, very good questions that get your customers to have kind of what's called an illumination thought, where they start thinking about something that they never thought about before, or it triggers an idea in their mind. And that's when you really become consultative. You can ask questions like, hey, have you ever considered XYZ? And they might say, well, no, why do you ask? Be like, well, other companies that we serve tend to have these following problems. I'm not sure if you have these problems, but I noticed a few things in our conversation that led me to believe that you may have similar problems, so I'd like to ask you a few additional questions if that's okay. And you see, that's much more consultative in trying to really diagnose and solution a customer's problem. If you think about a doctor or an attorney, they're experts in either law or medicine. And the higher you go up in the food chain in medicine, and you look at a brain surgeon, for example, or a neurosurgeon, they actually have such high expertise in what they do, but they're still a salesperson. Think about it. they have to sell someone on the idea oftentimes that they need surgery. And you can refuse surgery if you want, but they're so convincing because they're an expert in what they do that they're consulting what the best routes are to fix whatever their problem is. If they need brain surgery because they have brain cancer or whatever the problem may be, hopefully it's nothing that serious, they can diagnose it and they can consult that patient to make the right decision. And really, if you start flipping your mind and start thinking a little bit differently as a salesperson and start thinking about how can I help my customer or my prospect for that matter, think differently to see something through a different lens. How can I help them make the best decision based on my expertise that's gonna help them solve their problem the best way? Because if you're a great salesperson and the best in your industry, you care about your prospects and customers' success. And when you care, you should help guide and consult your customers. And when you do this, it's so much easier to close bigger deals, close more deals, because they don't see you as a salesperson anymore. They see you as someone they can call and ask for help. And then they pretty much just want to hand you their money. And I know that seems maybe oversimplified, but I can tell you, supporting enterprise level Fortune 500 companies, I've sold to C-level executives, VPs, directors, all the way down to line managers. And nearly all of them treat you the same way when you become a consultant or an advisor to them. And frankly, a lot of this experience I've gathered is competing against some of the biggest consultancies in the world. These companies have expertise that in a lot of cases I don't have. And I watch from afar about how my clients and customers treat these organizations and the people within them. And they basically write them the biggest checks without even thinking about it. And it's because of their expertise and because they're consulting them on their problems. So if you want to be a better salesperson and you want to be the best salesperson, become a consultant. Start consulting your customers, stop selling to them, start helping them understand their problem, see their problem from a different angle, and then help them make the best decision through your advice and through your questioning. Okay, on to number 5. So number 5 is something I'm very passionate about, and it's something that I have to laugh at because when I started out in sales, in B2B sales for that matter, and even in B2C 15 years ago, I cheated. And what I mean by that is I'm not a natural salesperson, but while I've done very well for me, and I've done very well in the company that I work for, I'm not natural at it. I had to work really, really hard at it, but I'm always looking for ways to be more productive and ways to kind of cheat the system. And when I mean cheat the system, I mean, how do I learn faster and how do I get successful faster? Because I don't have a lot of time to waste, and whatever I'm doing, I have to find a way to advance my learning curve as fast as possible. And there's no easier way to do that than look at the people that are before you or currently you're competing with within your organization that are better than you. You know, when I think back to my first year in sales at the company I work for, which I've worked for the last 12, almost 13 years, one of my mentors actually had a territory that I had at the time. And I remember looking back on our CRM system because I was struggling to reach some of the prospects that I was trying to set meetings with and eventually obviously sell them some of our services. And I struggled so much to write the appropriate emails. In fact, I talk about it in my book because it almost seemed like the phone wasn't working anymore at this time. It was right after the recession in 2008. And I was like not getting anywhere with my emails because they were kind of general. They were very vanilla and I sounded like every other salesperson. And so one of the things I did, which frankly, I feel like it's genius, but it's really not that smart, but it worked for me and I would encourage you to do the same if possible, is I went into our CRM system and I started looking at the documented emails he had sent. Now, if you don't have this option, there are other ways and tips that I'll give you. But one of the best things you can do is go back through your CRM system, or if you have anything that tracks any emails, or any type of communication from some of the best salespeople with customers, just mirror exactly what they're doing and apply it to your own customers, your own service, product, whatever it is that you sell that may be different than them. If maybe it's the same thing, but just do what they're doing. I mean, I literally copied word for word what my mentor was saying, except I just applied it to my specific customer and I saw a lot of success. And then from there, I made it my own. So you see, in the world of entrepreneurship, there's a lot of talk about copying and people cheating others out of their money. And really, there's nothing wrong with ethical copying because that's almost all ideas are created is ethically mirroring other people that were successful. Now, I'm not telling you to go steal someone's email and just copy and paste the entire thing into an email and send it to a customer. Of course not. But what I am saying is figure out the way that they construct an email. Maybe listen to someone who's really good on the phone if you have to make phone calls and cold calls, and listen to the way that they talk to customers. Even look at some simple things like how often do they do business development? Are they prospecting all day long, or do they choose specific times? Maybe they spend 20 minutes or 25 minutes at a time and then they take a 5-minute break and they get right back into it for 25 more minutes. All these little tips and tricks that they're doing that have made them successful are things you should be doing. Now you might say, well, some of our most senior salespeople that are the most successful, they're lazy, they just sit in these huge accounts and they don't do anything. And that could be true. I guarantee there's things that they do that got them to where they are, that if you just went and asked them, what are the things that you did to get you to where you are? Is there anything I could read that you've sent in terms of emails? What do the emails look like that you send to your customers right now? What do your phone calls sound like? Could I listen in and be a fly on the wall? Or right now, you could leverage Zoom or WebEx and say, I just want to learn and get better. So there's a ton of ways that you can practice and mirror what the most successful people in your company are doing, because if that's your goal, if you want to be the best, you have to do what the best are doing. And it's one of the easiest ways to improve and accelerate your learning curve and see success immediately. Too many people want to create their own path and do it their way. And while I'm a big proponent of creating your own path and doing things, on your own, nobody really does anything on their own and gets successful at the level that we're talking about in this video, being the best on their own. Everybody gets help, and you need to leverage others that have done things that you've never done before. That's how you're going to get successful. So mirror other people, copy the best, ethically of course, and learn how to accelerate your learning curve to get successful 10 times faster. Okay, on to the last one. Now the last tip here is something that frankly I almost wanted to leave out, because it's something that is kind of cliche, and it's something that anybody who talks about being successful or being the best would tell you. But it's important, and honestly in my career and in my life and anybody that I've seen be successful, it's true. And maybe this isn't something that's a shock to you, but it's something, if you're not where you want to be today, you need to listen to and you need to understand. Being the best isn't for everybody. In fact, there's times where I question whether me striving to be the best was the right thing for me at that appropriate season in my life. Because one of the things that got me to where I am in my career was making tons of personal sacrifices. And a lot of times these sacrifices were things that looking back now, I may not have made the right decision. Maybe I was sacrificing time with people I loved to try to be great at my job. And quite frankly, it can be really challenging. But there are sacrifices that you can make that don't impact other people. And some of those sacrifices can be not watching TV, not hanging out with friends, staying later, or in this case, because we're in a global pandemic, maybe you're not in an office and you're virtual, it's working more hours. And I know that it stinks to get sales advice that says, hey, you gotta work more. But when you're trying to become the best, there's just a principle of you have to work more than other people in order to get to where you want to go. There are very, very few successful people that are uber successful that don't work hard. And yes, there are the anomalies that kind of just have luck, and that's fine. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than be good. But in this specific case for this video, if you want to become the best, look around you. And I would ask you to ask yourself this question. It's one of the questions that I always ask myself, no matter where I am in my career, because whether I'm in the top 1% of sales today, if I want to become the number one in the company for the next entire year, that's really hard to do. I work in a company of 1,400 salespeople, and I've been in the top 1% for 8-9 years now. But staying number one as the number one rep can be very difficult, because I compete with some really great people inside my company, very talented people. And so I need to ask myself, am I doing everything I can if being the absolute best is my goal? And sometimes the answer is I'm not, and I have to be okay with those answers. But if you want to be the best, ask yourself what decisions you're making. Every decision that you make has a consequence. Consequences can be positive and they can be negative. But you need to understand that every decision you make has some type of consequence. And so that might mean closing your laptop or shutting it down an hour early on a Friday, or maybe it's a couple hours early. Maybe it's not getting up early to send emails to customers to catch them before they get busy in their day. Maybe it's not preparing those emails the night before and setting a delayed send on your email so that you don't have to worry about it in the morning. Maybe it's not preparing as well as you should be for meetings. Maybe it's not reading and self-educating yourself at night and instead you're watching TV. Maybe it's you're going out and having drinks with friends after work. All of these things have consequences, and sometimes it's the right decision. Like, I've had plenty of times where I've gone out with coworkers, obviously pre-pandemic, where we've had, happy hours and things like that. But if I think about it, when I really made huge jumps in my career to get to where I am, I sacrificed a ton of that time and said, no, you know what? I'm gonna stay back. I'm gonna make calls. I'm gonna send emails. I'm gonna prepare for my meetings the next day so I'm sharp. It's one of the easiest things you can do. Every business professional that's reached some level of success that most haven't would tell you that they've made a ton of sacrifices. And so if you wanna be the best, the one thing you just need to understand is this: you will have to make sacrifices. And sometimes those sacrifices can be really, really hard to make. And sometimes if you do make those sacrifices, they might be wrong. But you have to know what you want. And when you know what you want, you have to commit to it and you have to go all in. And that does require sacrifice. Now, if you're looking to become a better salesperson and you do want to become the best, there's so many little things you can do that don't require advanced degrees. They don't require the biggest accounts. They don't require you to be a natural salesperson. So start here with the suggestions I made in this video. They're things I've done as someone who's not naturally talented as a salesperson, but has seen quite a bit of success as a salesperson in a B2B enterprise sales role. And I hope that you can take some of these tips and be successful yourself if you do want to be the best and be the top in your industry or your company. Because I do know that being the best comes with a lot of gratification. Because the one thing I know for sure, when you reach the top pinnacle level of success as a salesperson, there's a lot of benefits, both financially, confidence, just so many things in your life. Doors open when you reach high levels of success as a salesperson. It's not just about the commissions you earn, it's about the way you can help other people. It's the doors that open for you in your personal and your business life. And so if that is you, that you want to become a great salesperson and want to be the best, try these tips out. Let me know in the comments below if you're already doing some of these things, or if you've never tried them before. Maybe you're not committing, and that's okay, but you're gonna make a commitment to yourself going forward that you're gonna try a few of these things. Maybe it's just one. Maybe it's just, you know what, I'm gonna make better decisions and I'm gonna sacrifice my personal time so that I can get ahead of everybody in my industry and my company. Or maybe it's, I don't practice right now, but now I'm gonna start practicing 3 times a week. Whatever it is, I look forward to hearing your feedback on this. Now, if you're looking to improve your prospecting, as I mentioned earlier in the video, you can go ahead and check out my book, The Intelligence Factor, in the link down below, something that might be of interest to you. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.